Disc golf.
Disc golf, 2, slept on.
All right, with the third Super Bowl champion from Patrick Mahomes, we need to talk about what it would be like if Patrick did in fact become a disc golfer. All right, so first off, we have to definitely mention that Patrick does at least know the existence of disc golf, because at least in this one particular short, he did shout out that people are sleeping on disc golf. Now, what does that mean exactly? I don't know. He is from Kansas City, so he obviously has some awareness of the sport, but that doesn't really matter if he actually knows about disc golf. Today, we're just talking about what it'd be like if he became a disc golfer. Patrick is truly the current face of the sport and has so many eyes watching him that if he even made just like a single post about him playing disc golf, not just saying, yeah, disc golf slept on, if he actually had a single post saying that he loves disc golf, I bet that would sell so much and get so many people out there. So first off, we have to definitely mention his insane accuracy year after year. This is not a fluke. This is his third Super Bowl win. So I definitely can say that with a high degree of certainty, he has a pinpoint precision accuracy. Now, will that translate very well with a disc versus a football? It's hard to say, but knowing how unique he is as a professional athlete, I think his flexibility to move on to a totally new object to throw is very possible. And looking at his form throwing the football, it looks so effortless, so smooth, so I bet you can translate that pretty darn good to what it would be like to have a smooth follow through with a disc. Obviously, it is going to take probably a couple of years to get to that high degree of like pro level play, but if there's anybody that can do it, I think it would be him. So let's go over my top picks for what I think he would excel at the most. First one would be the forehand. I think his ability to throw sidearms at players in like a split second really does show you that he can throw a flick forehand with a high degree of accuracy. Now he has to learn his disc lineup. He has to figure out like what actually would work on a line drive versus like a distance shot or like a super hyzer forehand. It would take a little bit of time, but I definitely have trust that he could do it. As far as distance goes, that is a very difficult thing to kind of gauge, because sure, you can see him throw like a sidearm like 20 feet with a football, but what does that really entail with a disc? I can't really say for sure, but I would definitely say that he is far and away much higher than the average player with the potential to throw sidearm. So assuming he doesn't injure his shoulder or elbow, I think in a year's time, he could figure out a way to get 400, maybe 450 on his sidearm. Now, as far as backhand, this is a very interesting quandary because we have never seen him throw anything that looks like a proper backhand. This would be much closer to like a tennis player or just other sports, so football doesn't necessarily have a true backhand equivalent. But with that said, I definitely think in the same realm as the forehand, he can get phenomenal distance because he has the best ability to throw with smooth form and accuracy consistently over time. And one thing that is very untested is his ability to throw without speed control. If he doesn't have people charging at him, he might have a whole lot better control than he already does. So the ability to throw a smooth, consistent backhand, especially with his muscle tone, really might be unrivaled. It might be a situation like Eagle where you don't need the biggest muscles to throw 700 feet. So I won't say he's going to be throwing 700, but I think in a couple years he could throw 550 to 600 with a smooth backhand, which would definitely get you anywhere you need to be on the pro tour. And then in addition to this, it is probably less of a big factor, but his conditioning is elite levels. He has probably the best conditioning of really any quarterback besides maybe Lamar Jackson. So with that, he has no concerns with playoff holes. If he is in the situation where he's been playing 4 or 5 rounds, he has to play another 9 holes, like say that battle between Eagle and Isaac where they had like 7 playoff holes. If he was in that position, he would not falter one bit because it is just another day for him as a professional athlete. And even though Eagle and Isaac are elite players, they do not have the same level of conditioning, I'm sure, that Patrick Mahomes does. So I am definitely giving him the extra point as far as conditioning goes. And then my last top pick would be stress management. This is probably the biggest thing I think he has that would exceed anybody else's. You have millions and millions of people watching you play every single week, which would almost certainly translate to performing well on the pro tour with having everyone watching you. And even though a team sport versus an individual sport is a totally different thing, I do think Patrick probably thinks of himself as having all the eyes on him because he is kind of the face of the sport at the moment. And really the only point to this that I think might be a negative against him would be the fact that he has to have so many more throws in a tournament versus an actual game, because in a tournament you're probably going to be throwing like maybe 200 shots. So compare that to maybe 50 throws of the football Very, very different. But with that said, he has the endurance, he has the strength, he has the conditioning to really perform well on tour. So with that, let's move on to the things I do not think he would do so well at, or at least I have major concerns about. So first up being, does his speed actually translate to anything useful on tour? Now, if this was Ultimate, sure, that speed would be incredibly valuable. But as far as disc golf goes, it is very similar to golf. There's no real value to high speed besides maybe generating more of a follow through and a higher spin rate on your backhand and forehand, which while that is valuable, that isn't really super critical in most rounds. But one thing I do know for sure is if he was to make a Ricky style putt, like a 100-foot putt, you best believe that that Ricky run would be insanely fast. He'd be sprinting as fast as he possibly could to that basket to rip out that putter from the basket. Not a valuable asset, but it would be very interesting to watch. And next up would be his putting. That is something that just has no real translation to football. Nobody is throwing from the center of their chest with a football. That just doesn't really happen. And that is not at all something that he has ever practiced. I'm sure of it. So with that said, he's going to be taking a couple of years to become a pro level putter, but that doesn't mean that he can't do it. I definitely think he has the potential to be an elite level putter. Getting those circle 2 putts would certainly be difficult, but if anyone can do it, I do think it would be him. And then as far as circle 1 putts, I think in the same realm as like his stress management goes, he would probably do decent. There is a lot of things that come into question when you've never done something, but he does do shuffle passes that are pretty accurate, not always accurate, but accurate enough to assume that he would do decently well. But the last concern that I have is wind conditions. There's nothing in the NFL that really does translate to Emporia level wind. Sure, there are a couple of games where you're throwing like a sky ball and it gets like a little bit altered by the wind, but for the most part, football is just not really going to get affected in the same way as a disc that has so much more potential to get affected by high winds. But with everything else about him, he has the highest ability to adapt to whatever condition he is in. So if he is in Emporia level winds, I do think he has the potential to really overcome that battle. But with that said, does he have a better potential than say anyone else that has played much more in the wind? That question still begs to be answered, and I don't really know for sure. But with that said, I think his potential growth for the sport would be astronomical. It could not be understated how many young people out there would become disc golfers if Patrick were to become an actual disc golf pro tour athlete. Now, we have seen other football players like JJ Watt post about playing disc golf, but that is just not really the same realm of popularity. And one major factor that I've not brought up yet is the offseason in the NFL does line up pretty darn good with the Disc Golf Pro Tour. Not perfectly, and a lot of the offseason is kind of conditioning for the main season, so it wouldn't line up perfectly, but he could potentially play maybe 10 DGPT events, which would definitely give him the opportunity to win a couple majors and a couple Elite Series events. But with that said, with this crazy idea, I'd love to know what you guys think. I know this is a bit absurd, but as a Chiefs fan, this is actually not Chiefs, I couldn't find my Chiefs shirt. I'm elated to be a 3-time Super Bowl champion fan of the Kansas City Chiefs. It is definitely a weird feeling to have everyone basically resenting you as a fan of the Chiefs, but that doesn't really matter. We are winners, and it feels good, feels great. But with that said, what do you guys think about Patrick becoming a pro tour athlete? Do you think it is possible? Do you think he would even be like top 100 after a year of practicing? And honestly, I know it's not a complete parallel, but looking at Brody, he's doing great at transitioning from ultimate to disc golf. So I do think the potential to transition from one athlete to another sport is very, very possible. But with that said, what do you guys think? I'd love to know. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe. I have a lot of fun videos that you do not want to miss. Wild Runs, signing out. Peace.